In the story of the Cherokee Nation, few figures stand out as brightly or as controversially as Joseph H. Van. Known as Rich Joe Van, he was a man of contrasts, a Cherokee leader and politician, but also a wealthy planter who enslaved African Americans. A man deeply tied to Cherokee traditions, yet also one of the most prosperous businessmen in the American South. From the taverns of Georgia to the cotton fields of Tennessee, and from the booming steamboat trade on the Mississippi to the forced exile of Indian Territory, Van's life captures the triumphs and tragedies of an entire generation. Today we dive deep into his story, the rise, the wealth, the removal, and the lasting legacy of a Cherokee leader who straddled two worlds in an era of change. Early life and family. Joseph H. Van was born on February 11, 1798 in Spring Place, Georgia. He was the son of James Van, a powerful Cherokee chief of mixed Scottish and Cherokee ancestry, and Nanny Brown, a Cherokee woman. The Van family was among the wealthiest and most influential Cherokee families of the early 19th century. James Van, Joseph's father, had established a network of taverns, trading posts, and plantations throughout Cherokee country. Known as Chief James Van, he was wealthy, charismatic, but also feared for his temper and violent nature. In 1809, when Joseph was only 11 years old, his father was assassinated by rivals within the Cherokee Nation. That event shaped young Joseph's life. He inherited not only his father's wealth, but also his powerful enemies, and the enormous expectations of living up to the Van name, the wealth of the Van family. By the time Joseph came of age, he had control over a fortune. His family owned large plantations worked by enslaved Africans, vast herds of livestock, and a series of taverns and ferries along the Federal Road, the main thoroughfare that cut through Cherokee territory. Joseph H. Van became known for his sharp business sense. He expanded his holdings, invested in new ventures, and maintained his family's influence in Cherokee political affairs. By the 1820s, he was one of the wealthiest men in the Cherokee Nation. So wealthy, in fact, that locals called him Rich Joe. He built a grand mansion in Georgia known as the Van House, a symbol of his family's prosperity. The two-story brick home, unusual for Cherokee territory, became a landmark, blending Cherokee wealth with Southern planter elegance. But prosperity came at a cost. Like other elite Cherokee families, the Vans embraced the practice of chattel slavery, mirroring the plantation system of their white neighbors. This fact makes Joseph Van's story deeply complicated. On one hand, he was a leader of a proud native nation, struggling to survive under the pressure of U.S. expansion. On the other, he was a wealthy slaveholder, benefiting from the same oppressive system that enslaved African Americans across the South. Political tensions and the coming of removal. As the United States expanded, pressure grew on the Cherokee Nation to give up its lands in Georgia, Tennessee, and Alabama. The discovery of gold in Georgia in 1829 only made matters worse, fueling white settlers' hunger for Cherokee territory. Van, like many Cherokee leaders, saw the writing on the wall. Though the Cherokee fought removal in the courts, winning the famous case of Worcester versus Georgia in 1832, the federal government under President Andrew Jackson ignored the ruling. By the mid-1830s, the push for removal was unstoppable. In 1835, a faction of Cherokee leaders signed the Treaty of New Dakota, agreeing to cede Cherokee lands in exchange for land in Indian Territory. The treaty was bitterly opposed by the majority of the Cherokee, including Chief John Ross, but it was ratified and removal became law. Joseph Van, understanding the grim reality, began preparing. In 1837, he led several hundred Cherokee westward, ahead of the brutal forced march known as the Trail of Tears that would claim thousands of lives just a year later. Rebuilding in Indian Territory. In Indian Territory, present-day Oklahoma, Van wasted no time reestablishing his fortune. He secured land along the Arkansas and Illinois rivers, prime spots for trade and agriculture. Using enslaved labor, he built new plantations, raised cotton, and established taverns and trading posts. But Van's greatest success came not on land, but on water. Recognizing the growing importance of river traffic, he invested in steamboats. His fleet soon traveled the Tennessee, Ohio, Mississippi, and Arkansas rivers, hauling cotton, goods, and passengers. By the 1840s, Joseph H. Van was not only one of the wealthiest men in Indian Territory, but also one of the most successful steamboat operators in the entire region. His vessels connected Cherokee lands to the broader economy of the Mississippi Valley. For a man who had been uprooted from his homeland, this was both survival and triumph. Life on the frontier rivers. The steamboat trade was dangerous but profitable. Riverboats faced snags, sandbars, boiler explosions, and the constant threat of fire. But Van's reputation as a businessman grew, and his boats became fixtures on the western waterways. He owned several steamers, including the Lucy Walker, which carried cargo and passengers between ports like New Orleans, Cincinnati, and Fort Smith. These routes tied Cherokee commerce into the lifeblood of the American economy, a remarkable achievement for a man forced from his ancestral home just years earlier. The tragic end. But Joseph Van's story ended in tragedy. On October 23, 1844, while aboard the Lucy Walker near Louisville, Kentucky, the steamer's boilers exploded. The blast tore the vessel apart, killing Van and scores of passengers. The accident shocked the region, cutting short the life of one of the most influential Cherokee businessmen of the 19th century. His death marked the end of an era. For the Cherokee, Joseph H. Van had been both a leader and a symbol of adaptation. A man who rebuilt his fortune in exile, even as his people endured loss and division. Legacy of Joseph H. Van. Today, Joseph H. Van's legacy is complex. He is remembered as a Cherokee leader, a wealthy planter, and the master of a steamboat empire. His mansion, the Van House in Georgia, still stands as a testament to Cherokee prosperity before removal. His story reminds us of the Cherokee elite who navigated a world of shifting borders, forced migration, and cultural change. But his legacy is also tied to slavery, a reminder that even Native leaders, themselves victims of oppression, participated in the enslavement of others. This contradiction makes Van's life one of the most complicated chapters in Cherokee history. Joseph H. Van was many things: a son, a leader, a planter, a slaveholder, a businessman, a river king. His life reflects the tensions of his time, caught between tradition and adaptation, between Cherokee sovereignty and American expansion, between prosperity and tragedy. Closing words. The story of Joseph H. Van is not just the story of one man. It is the story of the Cherokee Nation in the 19th century, a people forced from their homeland, yet determined to survive. It is the story of resilience, ambition, and contradiction, and it is a reminder that history is never simple. From the plantations of Georgia to the waters of the Mississippi, Joseph H. Van left a mark that still echoes today. He was truly the Cherokee leader turned steamboat king, a man whose life captures both the promise and the peril of the American frontier.